Going out to eat is always a fun experience. Not having to do the cooking or the cleaning up after, trying different foods you might not normally try. Going out and getting a meal at a restaurant is all well and good, but nothing could compare to going to a buffet-style restaurant and getting several meals worth of food at once. For me, growing up on Cape Cod, we had the Old Country Buffet restaurant. One was located in Hyannis, and that was kind of a destination as a kid for a family meal, and then even later in through college to go there to eat as much as possible for one price. What I'm going to do for this back in the day segment is wax nostalgic a little bit about Old Country Buffet and my experiences there, but also review this training video that I found to give you a deeper appreciation for the carving station of Old Country Buffet. Old Country Buffet dates back to 1983. At its peak, there were about 370 locations in 36 states. The one in Hyannis on Cape Cod closed in 2010. If you go back on Google Maps to the oldest date you can find on there for that location, you can see the Old Country Buffet. So it's recent enough that it's been captured on Google Maps. The parent company is Buffets Incorporated. That's the parent company. I guess it's appropriate. They filed for bankruptcy in 2008, which then started the downslide of how many locations there were. I don't know currently how many locations there are left of Old Country Buffet. An article from October of last year said there were 17. I'm looking, I don't see any. Although when I looked, I just found an Old Country Buffet with it spelled OLDE, like it's a new franchise, with locations in South Carolina and expanding from there. Those of you familiar with Old Country Buffet, do you remember you'd walk in, how many there were in your party? You'd have to go to the front desk there to whoever the host was. You would typically be seated, and then you were kind of left to your own devices. Even as a kid in my early teenage years going to Country Buffet, I knew not to waste my empty stomach on bread or salad. But it was a wonderland for a kid. There were all these counters with the steam trays in them with all different kinds of foods. And buffets are self-serve, so you had to show some kind of discipline to go up there, get a fresh plate, fill it with as much as you could fit. For me, typically it was the first 2 plates worth of food I could just whip through. Then your brain starts to catch up to your stomach. I think that's how it goes. You eat faster than you would normally eat, so you're full before your brain realizes it. My all-time favorite food there was the country fried steak. I'd stack those like poker chips on my plate, smothered in that white gravy. Oh, man. I can remember it being a family-type restaurant, so you'd go in there and eat at your table, your booth, but there'd be kids screaming everywhere, parents yelling. But it was a relatively affordable idea, going to a buffet restaurant and hopefully feeding your kids so much that they'd be in a food coma so you'd get some free time at home. There was all the usual sides there: mashed, coleslaw, mac and cheese. Does anyone remember, did they have baked potatoes, whole ones? Different soups, like I said, salad, which I always skipped, different types of bread, rolls. The only thing you really couldn't control was the meat from the carving station. There you were left at the discretion of whoever was working at that station. You'd have to go and ask them, please, can I have some beef or ham? Then you'd have to listen to them tell you what they think would be enough for you. If you ever went to Country Buffet and were annoyed at the carving station people and their portion sizes, don't blame them, because this training video that I found explains it all. The video that I found is part of what must be a larger video, because it's just under 11 minutes long, and it basically cuts off in the middle of this person talking. but it also starts at what is said to be segment 3. This looks like it's early 90s, 92, 93, and it's focused on the carving station.
We'll begin with your second shift duty, greeting and serving guests.
Good evening. Fried enough to eat today?
Boy, I'll say.
Well, that's great. Would you care for ham or beef?
A little both, I think.
All right.
The man at the center of this carving video, his name tag says Fred. The neat thing about this is that this Fred the carving guy has his own YouTube channel, which has this video on it. I don't know how long this total training video is. The segment that's uploaded, like I said, it's less than 11 minutes. The carving guy on his YouTube channel from 2021 said that he has the whole thing, and once he can get it, I guess, digitized, he's going to upload it. But that's over 3 years ago, and it's not there yet. So I can only review what they have. The video, at least where it picks up, starts with a very friendly narrator telling the carver how to greet guests, including having Fred the carver say specific things that probably were ingrained into carvers at all the country buffets. Say these exact lines like this.
You might ask something like this.
Is it still hot out there?
Or this.
Did you catch a game last night?
Or this.
Have you tried the lasagna? It's my favorite.
And it explains how to start conversations with people, how to start conversations with kids. And there's this little girl there holding her plate, looking just so awkward. They probably said, stand there and just smile. For those that went to Country Buffet, this video, it's a good slice of nostalgia because the carving guy, he's got his back to the mirrors and he's standing in front of his carving station with those golden heat lamps. When you see it, you'll remember it from going there. You also learn from the narrator that you're supposed to slice your meat dime thickness. Now, if you have a dime, turn it on its side. That's what they're supposed to slice and then tell you that it's more tender that way, like they're going to fool you. But the narrator also says that if the guest insists on a thicker slice or tons of slices of meat, you have to give it to them. So Fred the carver could say, I could cut you a thinner slice. Would you like that? And if you say, no, I want 15-inch thick meat, just half the roast, give it to me. They would have to do it. It's funny, in this video, there's these cutaways where it's like they either pause the video or slow the video down, so Fred the carver is just staring at people. There is a lot of good, useful stuff in it. It explains how to use the steel to sharpen your knife, which anyone that's ever worked in a restaurant, you know that if you need to sharpen a knife, it can be kind of a pain. Literally, if you do it wrong and then slice yourself with a dull knife. Naturally, in the training video, they tell you to keep your station clean it all the time. Keep your trash can where people can't see it, because I know who would want to see a full trash can next to the food or dirty rags. They go way into detail of how to make the illusion that you've given people more food than they have, depending on how much is on their plate, where to lay the meat to cover the most plate. I guess these are the tricks of the trade for Country Buffet.
When your guest's plate has very little on it, carve a full cut. Lay it over the bare portion of the plate.
I think when I got sliced meat, I just basically went with whatever they said was enough. I wasn't looking to cause trouble there. They sum up this training video by saying it's all of your duties as a carver besides carving meat, including helping the other lines, setting them up if they need food if you're not busy, how to clean your knife, sharpen your knife, clean the floor. The main point of being a carver or being an employee at Country Buffet, it says, is doing whatever it takes to make the guests happy.
Your final shift duty is doing whatever it takes to take care of the guests. At Old Country Buffet, serving guests is our #1 priority.
I'm assuming that means within reason. I don't know what the limits would have been for satisfying the guests. Like I said, if I went up and requested half of the roast beef for myself, I don't know if they'd give it. They'd probably ask their manager to throw me out. The training video from Country Buffet, like I said, it's probably 92 or 93. And this segment of it, it's 11 minutes almost of Fred the Carver going through his daily duties. He's on camera the whole time. I am hoping that he uploads the rest of this. Maybe I'll have to message him on YouTube because I want to see the rest of Country Buffet, not just the carving station. That was where I spent the least amount of time. And it is funny because it literally cuts off with the narrator in mid-sentence.
Be aware at all times of where the guest's hands are. Without realizing it, guests may move their hands in the path of your knife. Keep an eye out for this potential.
So I do know there's at least a part after and had to be a part before. So if I find those, we'll revisit this in the future. In my college years, I remember Country Buffet being kind of a meeting place for me and my friend Barry. You've heard about him a ton on this podcast. But he and I would go there. It was cheap and we could get tons of food, but we could claim a booth and we'd sit there and eat, yes, but we would just talk and we'd go on these random tangents of this funny, foolish stuff that only he and I would understand. Okay, so I'll give you an example, so forgive me because most of you probably will wonder what the hell I'm talking about. There was a point in time that Old Country Buffet had a mascot, OCB. It was literally a big bee with the giant head. It had to be for kids, it sure wasn't for me. But there was one point, I was probably the one that started this up because I'm the crazier of Barry and I. But I made the joke, I said, I wonder who's under the bee head. Like if it's someone out on parole where they're looking to get back in the workforce and they said, you can go wear this bee costume in Old Country Buffet. So they're walking around Country Buffet in this bee costume and there's kids yelling and screaming, spilling drinks on them, maybe throwing food at them, drawing on them with crayons. And all the while under the head, this person is getting madder and madder until eventually they just snap and start throwing stuff. And Barry and I are sitting in this booth at Country Buffet and we're just telling this story of this Old Country Buffet mascot just going psychotic on everyone in there. It was one of those times, we had so many times where we would just be in tears laughing at just the foolishness that we would come up with. Just each of us one-upping the other. Those are the lasting memories I have of Old Country Buffet. Are Barry and I there laughing during our college years, and the country fried steak, naturally, but more just the fun times. There were 3 total bankruptcies by Buffets Incorporated, with the last one being in 2016. There was also a 2010 salmonella issue at a Wyoming location, which, yeah, that's real good for PR. And there was a lawsuit and just such bad PR for Old Country Buffet in general. And as the 2010s went on, there was more of a concern about obesity. It's such a horrible problem in the world. You know, 1/3 of people in this country, in the world, are so overweight. And buffets don't help. Believe me, when I went there, I would eat 2-3 plates worth of food that was enough for probably 6 people. And then the final straw really was COVID. A, because it just shut restaurants down in general. But B, even when they reopened, the idea of everyone sharing utensils, even though it was, I guess, as sanitary as it could be, buffet restaurants have just started to fade away. They're not gone, but places like Old Country Buffet definitely are. I'll still remember the good times, tons of food with family, foolish jokes and fun with Barry. And now this training video with Fred the Carving Man. I'll link to the video and his channel in the description to the podcast. And I'll let you know if in the future, if I reach out to him, if he uploads the rest of that training video, we'll have to have a part 2 of a visit to Country Buffet.